So I think Bitcoiners that are criticizing people for adopting stablecoins are just too harsh. The chances of survival of Bitcoin is going to increase by an order of magnitude. There's a lot of importance for people in Africa who just want to get paid in Bitcoin and just stash it. US dollar is kind of like the way Westerners look at Bitcoin, and Bitcoin becomes too abstract.
So from a financial point of view, stability comes before prosperity. You can't be in a sinking ship and go, let's YOLO into Bitcoin. You're like, well, that actually doesn't serve my purpose. I need to preserve my purchasing power now. And for a lot of people, Bitcoin doesn't do that.
Archie. The chances of survival of Bitcoin is going to increase by an order of magnitude. The more different people come into the space and use Bitcoin for whatever their need is. There's a very important thing that Bitcoin can signify for people in Latin America who want to build circular economies. There's a lot of importance for people in Africa who just want to get paid in Bitcoin and just stash it to just preserve their purchasing power. There's a lot of value for German cryptographers who want to work on the cryptography aspect. And there's a bunch of value for, a suit in Chicago in the CME who just want to, use the properties of Bitcoin to just gain money. I think all of these reasons are fair. There's no one good or one bad use of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is so awesome that it means so many different things to so many different people, and that is the recipe for success if you want Bitcoin to really become global.
Yeah, I love that, and especially because a lot of these people who are upset love to tell others Bitcoin doesn't care. when they have a complaint, yeah. Right? But when it's something that they don't like, it's all like, throw the toys out of the cot sort of thing. And it's like, well, actually, Bitcoin doesn't care for you too. It doesn't care for your ideology. It is what it is. It's a neutral protocol that everyone can relate to it in whichever way they have a need that's most acute. And so I don't have a need right now to use Bitcoin as a transaction platform. I don't need it because I transact fine. Mm-hmm. I need a store of value though.
Exactly.
Right.
And that even more so for people like from Argentina. Like as an Argentinian, very early on, I told you my family, my cousins, my grandma were talking about inflation, right? Part of that, conversations that you have very early on results in you essentially understanding at a very young age that the pesos that you earn are the first thing you need to spend because you have no idea how much that peso is going to be devalued in a week, in a month, in 3 months from now. It becomes second nature. It's something that you don't even think about. And
so consumption as a store of value is a very real calculation that people have to make.
Right.
I have to buy something because the money is going to be worth less very quickly. Mm-hmm. And that something is going to act as a store of value greater than my money in and of itself, exactly. Which is a completely different way of thinking for many people who've lived in relatively stable Western societies. Like that's been the environment in which I've only known. I've never known anything else. Mm-hmm. And so in our countries, in our cultures, spending the money was deemed to be profligate. No, you save your money. Mm. And so explain to us what sort of things people would buy to store their value other than sort of precious metals and anything else that they might have access to in that way. What kind of consumption materials or consumer choices would people make?
Well, first of all, you just need to pay your bills and buy all the necessities for the month, right? So it's like food, water, pay all your bills, pay your rent, all the basics. And then with whatever you have left, you're not saving that. You start to think, I need to put this money somewhere. And, in places like Argentina where, this type of attitude, extrapolated by almost everyone who makes money, who has a salary or get paid in Argentina, when that attitude prevails, it creates an insane demand for US dollars, right? And US dollars have historically been the, choice for storing whatever savings that you have. And to the degree that, the government throughout so many decades have just put capital controls into place. So you're not allowed to, through legal means, to actually get however many dollars you want to save. So people, as a result, it's not like they're saying, oh, yeah, you're right, man, the government doesn't want me to get US dollars. Maybe I shouldn't think about it. No, they just think about other ways to do it. So you see like weird store of values like olive oil, bricks. They just literally buy bricks, store it there, and then when they need cash flow to buy something, they sell the bricks because the bricks have better, they store value better than the Argentine peso. And that's just two examples of like many different, like you wouldn't believe how creative Argentine.
How are they selling it? Is it you go and try to barter that for something else, or is it literally for a means of exchange? So you might sell them for cash and then use that cash again for something else.
Yeah. You just go to where they sell bricks and hey, give me X amount of bricks, and then you get rid of your cash that way, and then you take the bricks home, you store it in your garage or something. And then when you need money, you resell the bricks for probably a bigger amount of pesos that you bought it for. It's just insane how people that have already a very messed up reality, right? Because you go outside in the streets in Argentina, obviously there's better places and worse places, but as a whole, you can't be yourself. You can't be free. You can't have good sneakers. You can't show that you're wealthy. You can't wear a watch. You always have like this, I don't know, this part of the brain that is always like looking around when you go. It's not safe. So if that's not bad enough, you also need to become your like financial director of your family to kind of like, how the hell do I navigate all these insane BS that is happening with the Argentine peso? So yeah, bricks, olive oil, canned food, anything. Outside of I think, lately the with Milei, capital controls is not a thing anymore. But last time before Milei, I think the monthly cap was $200, $200 a month that you could legally exchange. But then, these type of like artificial controls only, creates a demand for people to search out for underground solutions, alternative solutions. And that's why stablecoins, that's why Tether is so successful, because that is the use case that, Argentinians need, and many other countries as well. But for Argentina specifically, US dollar is kind of like the way Westerners look at Bitcoin. Argentinians, they look at the US dollar. It's the store of value for them. So when stablecoins give you that unlimited cap and you can actually transact how much you want without thinking about capital controls, then obviously Tether and stablecoins become a thing. And another thing that Bitcoiners are also hating, right? Like a lot of people are saying, well, they should just use Bitcoin instead of stablecoins. And yes, obviously, the US dollar is also a fiat money that also evaporates over time and loses value and is programmatically debased. But the learning curve, when you come from places like Argentina, Turkey, Venezuela, Iran, where there's so few financially literate people, at least, the literacy is from a household level. Like you understand inflation because, oh shit, milk is more expensive. And then you deduct from there. But in terms of like how money works, how debasement work, how much pesos are in circulation, nobody has any clue of how that works. So it becomes a very like simple thing where you're just like, hey, I need to store value and US dollar is the standard. And Bitcoin becomes too abstract and they need way longer time than a Westerner actually needs, So I think Bitcoiners that are criticizing people for adopting stablecoins are just too harsh. They have absolutely no empathy towards people because it's survivalship bias at the highest level. Like for you, Bitcoin works perfectly, but you come from a very distinct, very different background, and you can't compare yourself and your success with the average Argentinian, the average Turkish, or Venezuelan. It's just there's no empathy. So need better Bitcoiners, man. We need Bitcoiners that know the full spectrum. But I do think it's getting a little bit better, but I'm also afraid because the media is so fragmented that once you find like an influencer or two that you trust, it's very hard to get out of that algorithmic trap. It's very hard to get out of these echo chambers. So I'm very worried that people will just find the wrong influencers and look at Bitcoin as like, I don't know, speculative trading type because there's so much content being produced for that they will never be able to go deeper in and kind of like learn about, how money works and stuff like that. But, that's the responsibility we all have to have, I guess.
I think you touched on a really interesting point about I guess, maximalist culture, if you want to say. But I really don't even want to give them maximalism, because maximalism is something that a lot of people can buy into without resorting to a blinkered worldview. I'm sure a lot of people at Blockstream are maximalists, but they don't go on the timeline and abuse people for having an opinion that's marginally outside the orthodoxy, for example, like with respect to stablecoins. And so I guess, the people who do have on-the-ground experience, they're much more focused on alleviating some kind of pressure or some kind of desperate need for whatever it is, means of exchange or store of value. And so they seem to be, like you said, much more empathetic towards solving problems rather than pushing ideology. And I always find it confusing that these people who are sitting quite comfortably on the timeline making all sorts of accusations of scammers or throwing insults around and like, hey, how does that help anybody other than just make you feel good about belonging in a subculture and perhaps even taking part in a circle jerk? Because quite often it just seems like people are posting for each other rather than to search for a solution to a problem. And I think that's where I always start, is like, that's what made me quite quickly accept that stablecoins were a necessary part. Because when I hear people like Alex Gladstein and people from his organization and other activists actually outline the material benefits of stablecoins, I don't care if it's on some chain that you have a problem with. Is it helping someone somewhere much easier than what Bitcoin can? Yeah, great. Mm-hmm. Can Bitcoin perhaps at some point overtake that requirement? Sure. When that happens, I'll be there championing that as well. And it's not, I see a lot of people writing off potential users in those countries as either being, not smart enough or too lazy to do this. And I think, no, it doesn't work that way. People look for the easiest, most readily available solution to use. And if the Bitcoin solution is not quite there yet, it has to compete in a free market. Like, we're all free marketeers, aren't we? Until we're not. Mm-hmm. So it's like, that's how I look at that. And I just wish people would be much more focused on solving problems rather than pushing ideologies. Ideology is good. And like you said, I hope, and I don't think we'll ever lose that cypherpunk subculture. I think that will always power a large part of the Bitcoin ecosystem. But what we're seeing now with Wall Street, I think it was inevitable. And I found it refreshing to hear Adam's take on it, which, if you didn't know much about Adam, which, I don't know too much about him. I know his background and everything. It was like, yeah, like, this guy's been trading markets since before Bitcoin.
Totally.
Right. And he's been into investments and all sorts of things, right? And he's trading, I think he told me he traded Forex at one point and a whole bunch of other stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, so like, if everyone who's into these Bitcoin treasury companies is a scammer, you might want to have a word to Adam Back about that. Yeah. Like, since your Bitcoin bona fides are much stronger than Adam Back's.
Right. I mean, right? kind of ridiculous. And also, but that's the thing that we talked about in the beginning of our convo, right? A lot of people today, they let ideology do their thinking for them. They see the world through a specific lens backed by their ideology, because in the world that we're living right now, it's just too much information, too much stuff going on that you're just like, I have understood the world in this way. Let me just look at everything new that comes in the future through that lens, because that's my understanding of the world. And that Bitcoiners are not like this magical species that are outside human nature. There's so many people being captured by the exact same thing. So when they look at stuff like, Argentinian stablecoin adoption is up 35% last year. And then their knee-jerk reaction is, but why hasn't Bitcoin adoption been even higher? That means you're looking through this thing with this lens from an ideological perspective and not really having empathy for the people that, like you said, are actually saving their purchasing power. Do you know how much that means? Like, just the fact that you living in a place like Argentina have the ability to save money and not lose your purchasing power over time. Dude, that is the thing that will, if you extrapolate that to the entire society and you have a country where its people are actually gaining purchasing power over time, that means families are not going to be broken up because the father or somebody had to go to Spain and send money back, right? The same for El Salvador, the same for a lot of these countries who are losing the people who should stay in their countries and build that country and make it better. Those are the ones who leave. And, you know, if they don't have a reason to leave and they can actually stay because of, you know, saving in Tether, how can you be mad at that, bro? Like, you're looking at this the wrong way.
When you're experiencing pain, the first thing you want to do is alleviate the pain, right? Let's shoot for the moon, guys, and let's, you know, YOLO into Bitcoin. You're like, well, that's actually doesn't serve my purpose. I need to maintain or preserve my purchasing power now and for the immediate future. And for a lot of people, Bitcoin doesn't do that. Nope. And we need to recognize that it doesn't do that.
Yep.
And you can't just badger people with, well, over a 4-year period. It's like, mate, what are you talking about? 4 years, right? Yep. I can't plan financially that far ahead if I'm living in a country like that.
Exactly right.